Hey there, it's Lara here. Welcome to this week's edition of Witchy Wednesday. This time, we're talking about the astrology and the energy for the week of July 3rd to 9th, 2019. So, first off, I really appreciate you being here, hanging out with me for a while. And if this, resonates with you, I'd love to know. I'd love for you to leave me a comment or a message. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with people who you think might be interested, all of that. I do appreciate it. Um, and I'm curious to know what, if anything, has transpired for folks over the course of this initial eclipse, right? Because we have another one coming July 17th or 16th, depending where you live, I believe. And that one's going to be in the opposite sign of Capricorn, where we know we've got a lot of stuff brewing. Saturn, Pluto, South Node, right? And we've been talking about that in previous videos. And so, but right now we're kind of between eclipses, but we still have a lot going on. We're at this, point in the year where we're halfway through, and I feel like there really is a shifting and a changing happening in terms of the energy, but we may not be seeing evidence of that just yet. It's more on a subliminal level, even, it's kind of happening under the surface, it seems, right now. We may get inklings and hints and perceptions and feelings and these kinds of things, but we're on this sort of precipice of what's going to transpire, how are things going to unfold. We're at a place of, a lot of us, I think, are just kind of wanting to wrap up all these loose ends, or things that we're still tied to, that we're still dealing with, that we still have responsibilities towards. And we're just wanting to kind of lose that heaviness and move into the next the next leg of the journey, so to speak, the next part of the year. And it's interesting, because that it can't be rushed, right? We have a lot of things that we still need to kind of clear up, to deal with. And these may happen, that may be literally, in our lives. There's things, business that needs taking care of, jobs that need finishing, addressing, whatever. But it can also be on sort of a more internal or energetic level, where there is some cleaning up of things that need to happen, some mop-up operations, that sort of thing, so that we can really move into a new space, right? And that's reflected in a lot of retrograde energy that we're in the midst of right now. And I'm going to speak to that shortly here. But, so there's a lot of this sense of needing to reflect, needing to review, needing to revise, even though it's not a re word, but kind of like wrap up, cross the T's, dot the I's, that sort of thing. A lot of that is going on right now, and it can be a little bit frustrating, a little bit challenging, but necessary nonetheless. We also have these themes of, as I spoke to in last week's video on the eclipse in Cancer, and if you did not see that, I really encourage you to go back and watch that, because this energy is relevant and will continue to be relevant for us for quite a while now, right? Eclipses happen in they happen in pairs, first of all, right? So we've had this one in Cancer, the solar eclipse, which is a new moon. And then we will have the lunar eclipse in Capricorn, its opposite sign, which is a full moon. And that's happening in a couple weeks' time. And I'll speak to that in next week's video. But over and above that, this is an eclipse cycle. Eclipses, in astrology, things happen cycles within cycles within cycles, right? It's like this spiral kind of unfolding, and it's all connected. So the eclipses are associated with the nodes of the moon. And the nodes of the moon stay in a sign, or signs, because there's two of them opposite the chart, for 18 to 24 months. And so while the nodes are in specific signs, that's where the eclipses are taking place. And so these are the themes that the eclipses address for us, right? Depending on where those signs, and in this case, Cancer and Capricorn, depending where they fall in our chart. And, I spoke largely to Cancer and the Cancerian themes that are playing out for us in last week's video, and a little bit about its opposite, Capricorn, but I'll speak more to that next week. And as you know, if you've been around for a while, we've been talking a lot about that Cancer-Capricorn axis because there's so much going on and continuing to transpire in that those two energies for us. And, a lot of us might be grappling with themes of, what feels like home, who feels like home, where's a safe place, what gives me a feeling of security, who's my tribe, those are all Cancerian themes, issues around mother, around ancestral healing and ancestral karma. And a lot of us, I think, are dealing with, we're carrying baggage from the past. And when I say past, I don't just mean like our past in this lifetime. I mean, we're carrying, energetic imprinting, genetic imprinting, family karma, this kind of thing that we may not even be consciously aware of. But some of us are here to kind of shift that pattern and to release that and to change things for future, right? For future generations and for our ancestral line moving forward. Not an easy job, but there's a lot of that kind of thing bubbling up right now. Cancer on a larger scale also has to do with the homeland, right? And homeland security. So we can see those themes playing out in terms of the larger picture, on the political front, that kind of thing. Cancer also has to do with issues around the mother and the child. So we see these themes playing out. And then, opposite that, the Capricorn energy of authority, of the more kind of masculine energy of, ambition and power structures, hierarchy, tradition, institutions, these kinds of things. And I'll speak a little bit more to that. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole too much in this video because I'll save that for next week's video, right? But nevertheless, lots going on in this arena, this Cancer Capricorn arena. And we've got, I don't think I've even told you where the moon is at just yet, but the moon is still sitting in Cancer as I'm recording this video, where the eclipse, the sign where the eclipse happened. And then later today, it's entering Leo, and it will enter Virgo on Saturday and Libra on Monday. And later today, July 3rd, we have Venus entering Cancer as well. So there's going to be, more emphasis on that Cancer energy. And Venus will be in Cancer until July 27th. So when Venus is in Cancer, okay, put those two energies together, right? Venus is the planet that rules it rules relationships of all kinds, including our relationship to ourself. It rules beauty and aesthetic and values and, how we get pleasure from life. It rules our resources, our money, material resources, worth, self-worth, those kinds of things. This is what Venus is all about. And then Cancer is all about our emotions and our feelings and our sense of emotional security and safety and protection and nurturing, home, that kind of thing, family. And so we may have with Venus in Cancer, what may happen is, we may have some emotional ebbs and flows, right? Cancer is ruled by the moon. Moon rules the tides. Humans are largely made up of water, so we are really impacted by the cycles of the moon. So we may have some ups and downs in terms of our relationships, our values, our worth, our resources, these kinds of things, right? And when Venus is in Cancer, we tend to show our love and appreciation through devotion and nurturing and nesting and protecting that what feels like home and family and tribe to us. And we crave that in return, right? That's how we want to be appreciated and loved. So we might do, like, on a more practical level, we may be spending some energy, some resources, some time on, like, beautifying our homes or on our close familiar relationships. And Venus may bring a little softness if there was some harshness related to these eclipse energies. Then Venus may, beautify that a little for us as well. And so she's there until July 27th. And then we also have Mercury going, stationing direct, right? Mercury will retrograde officially on July 7th. And so retrograding in the sign of Leo at between 4 and 5 degrees Leo, and then we'll go back into Cancer on July 19th, 20th, and it will travel all the way back to 23 degrees, between 23 and 24 degrees of Cancer, and then station direct, start moving forward, and re-enter Leo on August 11th, 12th. And then it will move right out of the shadow on in mid-August. So right onto new territory, in other words. And I'm going to speak to where this Mercury retrograde is happening for each of the signs, because it's a time to really do some review, some reflection, some rethinking, reevaluating, all of these things, reorganizing in this area where Leo sits, but then Cancer, back into Cancer as well, right? Because it will retrograde right back into Cancer, and so touch on all the Cancerian themes. And remember at the start I was talking about how we seem to have this kind of mop-up operation sort of thing, this energy happening, and so that's part of that. So I'll talk a little bit more about what the Mercury retrograde means in a second, but the other thing that we have going on is Chiron is retrograding as well. And that's happening on the 8th, right after Mercury retrogrades. And it's retrograding in Aries at between 5 and 6 degrees of Aries. And then it retrogrades back to 1 degree, turns direct around December 12th, and then it will exit that area of the chart. So it will it will move on from five degrees of Aries in April of next year of 2020. So, if you have Chiron in those first 5 degrees of Aries, then you're experiencing what we call your Chiron return, right? Which I'm going through that myself right now, which happens around age 50, 51. I've spoken about this at length in a couple of separate videos that I've done on my, on my YouTube channel in a file called, I don't know, like special astrology videos or something like that, I think. So you can find them there. And I encourage you to listen to those if you haven't yet. So Chiron, your Chiron return, just briefly, is when Chiron returns to the place in your chart that it was when you were born. And so this is, what we call midlife. And sometimes we have a midlife crisis. And sometimes, and hopefully and optimally, this is a very powerful time to really step into your own, right? To really kind of own it. And you've earned your stripes, and now perhaps have some wisdom to share with others. And anyways, it's so again, I talk a lot about that in those two videos, one on Chiron in general, and then one specifically on this transit of Chiron through Aries, which is happening right now for us, still in the fairly early stages because it's in those early degrees of Aries, and will continue on for the next 7 years or so. So that's worth knowing about because it impacts all of us in some way, right? The whole theme of Chiron in Aries, in a nutshell, is healing our identity in some way. And so if you have planets or points or angles at that early degree, 0 to 5 degrees kind of thing of the cardinal signs, particularly of Aries, but of the other cardinal signs as well. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, where we've got a lot going on, right? Cardinal energy, just as an aside, is the energy of initiation, of new beginnings, of it's cardinal energy. Those cardinal signs are the signs that mark the beginning of the 4 seasons. So you can see how this connects to what I'm talking about like this newness wants to happen, right? Like we want to get on with it, but we still have things that we're wrapping up and dealing with and mopping up and clearing and all of that. So, that's speaking to that. But if you have planets, points, angles, your sun, moon, rising, a cluster of planets, your ascendant, which is your rising, your MC, which is the top of your chart, your IC, which is the very bottom of your chart. If you have, those points or some planets around those early degrees of the cardinal signs, then some healing will no doubt be triggered for you during this transit of Chiron. And it's really time to go over and do, as I've said, like the mop up, right? The mop up of what was left behind during the first pass of Chiron through those degrees, because Chiron is going back now and going, okay, what did I leave back there? What is some unfinished business that I didn't take care of? It's like going in and kind of really debriding the wounds, so to speak, to really make sure that everything's cleared up and that the healing will happen optimally. So with that in mind, I'm first going to show you the chart, and then I have a poem to share with you, a short poem that I feel is really relevant for this, for where we're at here, and particularly as it relates to Chiron and Chiron in Aries. So here's the chart, and this is for today, actually, July 3rd. And we can see, where should we start? I guess we should start up here. So we can see, I was speaking to you about Venus. So there's Venus right at 0 degrees Cancer, right? Just entered the sign of Cancer, where we still have the sun and we have the North Node pointing us to where we ultimately want to move towards. And then we still have the moon right now in Cancer as well, and it will move on to Leo later today. We have Mars now in Leo, early degrees. We have Mercury in Leo and going to go retrograde, right? Not retrograde yet, but we'll retrograde on the 7th. Then we have, let's see here, Uranus in Taurus. There's Eris, as I've spoken about before, asteroid Eris in Aries. And Chiron. There's Chiron in Aries, preparing to station retrograde, sorry. There's Neptune retrograde in the sign of Pisces. There's Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. There's Saturn retrograde in Capricorn. There's the South Node. There's Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius, right? You see what's going on here? So, and you can see ping, 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 all this energy back and forth, Cancer, Capricorn, right? So that's what the chart looks like, briefly. And so you heard me talking about all the retrograde. We will have, by the time Mercury and Chiron retro, 7 planets retrograde. So Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Chiron, Neptune. Neptune's retrograding. No, Neptune is retrograde. See, it gets hard to keep track of. And also asteroid Ceres, right? Ceres is retrograde. She's not on the chart today, but and she will station direct later in July, but that we'll still have 6 planets. 6 planets is a lot of retrograde energy. And then Uranus will also retrograde in August. But these planets that move more slowly, Neptune, Pluto, Jupiter, Chiron, like it's not, this is normal for them to retrograde every year. So it's not that that's a huge deal. It's still relevant, and it's still something to note when this is all happening at once. So it's really, as I mentioned, it's a time of going through some reflection, some release, some review, some recalibration. I love that word. I really feel, particularly with eclipses, that this is like a reset button. It's a recalibration time, where the universe kind of goes, okay, what's kind of not working as it should, and so let's reset that. And sometimes that's challenging. It sort of depends on where we're at and what's happening in our own personal chart, and our level of kind of awareness, self-awareness, consciousness, these kinds of things, right, all impact how we not only feel these energies, but how we ultimately choose to respond to them. And as you know, if you've been around for a while, if you've ever had a reading with me, I'm very big on the notion of free will, right? Astrology is ultimately, there are events that are kind of lined up, predestined, if you will, fated, karmic, those kinds of things. Yes. However, there is always the element of free will. Free will is always the wild card. We always have the choice how we respond to things. And the more kind of awake and aware and conscious we are, our options open up to us, right? We have more options available to us in terms of how we're going to respond. Now, does that mean it's always easy? Does that mean that, people who have an awareness of these things are always, moving through life completely enlightened and always choosing the best route and the best response and all of that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, we're human, like it or not, we're human. And part of what we're here for is to have the full range of human experience. And so nobody's perfect, no matter how, you know, enlightened you are. So anyway, that's that's my spiel about fate and free will. Free will. But I want to get to speaking about, oh, one other thing before I get on to this. When we have all this retrograde energy, not only is it a time of going inward, of reviewing, of reflecting, of slowing down ultimately, um, of looking at things from a different perspective, of, you know, as I said, recalibration, all those re words, right? But it can also bring up things from the past, things that have yet to be dealt with or that we thought we dealt with. And then we get some messages that come to us that make us realize that maybe we didn't fully deal with that, or there are still some loose ends to tie up. That need to be taken care of, right? Or like situations, people, circumstances, feelings, all of this stuff can come back from the past. And that's so that we can do this kind of fine tuning, right? Of that process and to deal with those things, you know, the next layer of those things. And so that may happen during retrogrades as well. So I was talking to you about this poem. This is one of my very, very favorite poems. And I may have shared it on one of these videos way back when. I don't remember. I know I've used it in workshops and things like that. And it was introduced to me many, many, many years ago when I did a course on mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so it's called Guest House by Rumi, right? Who was a 13th century mystic and Sufi poet. And I'm sure there's Rumi memes and stuff all over the internet at this point. So most people have heard of Rumi, but I love this. Really, really spoke to me. The first time I heard this, I thought, oh, that makes so much sense, right? And it really relates to where we're at right now because we have a lot bubbling up and a lot of emotions, particularly in this Cancer and all this Cancer energy and this series of eclipses. There's a lot of emotion running through us right now. Some of it's ours, some of it's not. Some of it, you know, wants to be released. It can be from our ancestral line, even. It can be, you know, those of us who are very sensitive to energies, who are very empathic. This can be, you know, we're the conduit for clearing this out. And it's not fun and it's not easy. You know, speaking from experience over here, it can feel completely overwhelming. It can be draining, exhausting, frustrating, upsetting, you know, all of those things. And what I'm been trying to do, and again, not easy, is to kind of remind myself on a regular basis that this isn't necessarily all about me. It's not necessarily all mine. And some of it is. Like, let's not you know, sugarcoat things here. We've all got our crap, right? God knows I'm no exception. You know, to deal with. And so the point is to allow these emotions, these feelings, these energies to flow through us. To not, Cancer can have this tendency to kind of attach and hang on. You know, so and hang on to the past. And we don't want to do that. We want to allow these things to flow through and be released, and kind of be the observer, right? Interesting. What's that about? Kind of step outside yourself and go, where's this coming from? What's this trying to teach me? Is this mine? Is this not mine? And just kind of allow these things these impressions, these feelings, these emotions to flow through us and be cleared and cleaned out and washed away, right? Cancer the water energy. And so with that, I have this poem to share with you, which is called Guest House. And I'd love to know if this resonates with you on some level. You can leave me a comment below. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the sham, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So I get goosebumps every time. And that is just really reflective, I believe, of where we're at right now. And that is some solid 13th century, mystic advice there, if you ask me. And so that helps me, and maybe it helps you too, if you're kind of in the same place. So that's part of the healing process, right? Is allowing these things to come in, to be felt, to be acknowledged, to be welcomed. What are you here to teach me? What messages do you have for me? Yeah, I have actually something that I posted on social media earlier this week. I think it was when Mercury entered Leo, and it's we all just want to be seen and heard, no exceptions, right? This is a truth bomb card from Danielle Laporte, who somebody that I'm a huge fan of. But anyway, that sort of speaks to that. That's, everybody wants to be seen and heard, and these messages are they're coming from somewhere, right? They're somebody's feelings, whether they be yours or some ancestral karma, some stuff you're feeling outside yourself that's not really yours. We're all attached. It's like this big energetic web, and these things need to be acknowledged and faced and welcomed and allowed to be released ultimately. So I think I'm gonna leave the intro there, and I hope that wasn't too rambly for you. But I'm going to stop this video here, and I'm going to move on and do the next video where I go through like the part 2, right? Which is kind of the way things have been playing out here. Still not 100% if that's a format that will continue, but it's working for us for now. And it's a little bit more work on my end, truthfully, but that's okay, because then I don't have to rush. And I'm going to jump off here and see you in the next video, where I'm going to speak to the Mercury retrograde and touch on the Chiron retrograde and where that's happening for each of you, each of us, in our respective charts based on rising sign. So I hope you got something from this intro, and some understanding of kind of where things are at for us right now. And next week I will address at more length the lunar eclipse that's happening in the sign of Capricorn. Okay, so take good care, and I'll see you in part 2. Bye-bye.